Great.
Two.
Afternoon. Welcome back to House Transportation Committee in the afternoon of March 16th. We're continuing our work on our transportation bill, the policy language. So before we move to our what we hope might be potentially our final draft, there are two other dangling pieces out there that we wanted to take care of in the same way that we've kind of dealt with all of these, the revised language that's coming in. So just for the committee, and I think the committee got some two pieces. So following up on Representative Bartholomew's idea from yesterday, and we'll let him present that, and then some further detailed language about the e-bike proposal from Representative Straw. So we're going to wait on the e-bike Representative Straw until he gets here, but I think it's okay for us to move forward with Representative Bartholomew, and we have with us our legislative counsel. So Anthea is pulling up some language.
Okay, so this is posted under, for the record, Anthea Dexter Cooper from the Office of Legislative Counsel. If you look under my name under today's date, there are 3 documents posted. This is the middle document. It says Route 5 Bicycle Corridor Proposal from Representative Bartholomew. I also think you all have hard copies of it. So I did not highlight anything here to show the changes that have been made from the prior iteration of this, since it's sort of a complete rewrite because it's a different approach. That one would have required the Agency of Transportation to do a feasibility study. This instead is crafted as looking for whether or not there's support for a Route 5 bicycle corridor, and the result being a survey report. So the Agency of Transportation, in partnership with the regional planning commissions and done through the annual Transportation Planning Initiative, which I'm sure Michelle can tell you what it is, I can't, shall conduct a survey of municipal support for the creation of a bicycle corridor. This will look similar because it's similar language to what you saw yesterday, consisting of 1 or more segments of bicycle lanes or bicycle paths or both to provide a safe means of travel via bicycle on or along a route that is roughly adjacent to US Route 5 for the approximately 190 miles between the borders. The survey needs to address the level of interest of municipalities and regional planning commissions in prioritizing the creation of a bicycle corridor along some of that stretch, and it needs to include the consideration of the costs of the creation and the benefits to the tourism industry in Vermont in general, and in the municipalities along Route 5 in particular. And then just like the give back due date for what was the feasibility study and Representative Bartholomew's language from yesterday, the agency needs to provide a report on the outcome of the survey to the House and Senate Committees on Transportation on or before January 15th of 2024. And that date hasn't changed. Just what is being given to those committees has changed.
All right, so since Representative Bartholomew, I want to give you the opportunity to
Well, I think it's been covered. We had a discussion yesterday, and I think the main issue identified yesterday is what exactly would a feasibility study entail, and differences of opinion of what that technically would mean. So this at least starts us down the...
Hold on a second, I just can't hear you because there's other chatter going on. So could you just back up a little bit? I was unable to hear you. I heard like...
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where to back up to.
There are different interpretations of
what a feasibility study is and what that would entail. And this is clearly starting the discussion among the towns and municipalities along the way to ascertain whether it's a good idea, whether it would make sense, and would it be good for their towns, how would it benefit them, and then I think it appropriately would leave it to us to, after they're looking at the results of a survey, to decide what makes sense as the next step. It might be a feasibility study of some way defined, or it might be planning, it might be different segments that we want to look at. And then so after we get some results about interest, then we can decide as a legislature what action to take. So I think it makes sense to me. And I was pleased that the agency, Michelle in particular, was willing to work with me on this and come up with some language that I believe is mutually acceptable between hopefully our committee and the agency.
Great, great. So thank you for doing that in short order and appreciate bringing this back to the committee. So does any members of the committee have comments, questions? Representative?
I like it.
Okay,
I appreciate the agency's willingness to engage and find a way to explore it.
great. Others? Representative Dodge?
I'm just curious whether, thank you, Madam Chair, I'm curious whether, like, what resources, is it all sort of capable to be done? Is it feasible? Is this feasible to, the survey feasible? Okay, great.
Because I think just that point, my understanding is because town RPCs do this, that through an annual transportation planning initiative, that it's part of the work that our regional planning commissions do. So that was a big important shift with that cost factor of what this would entail.
Yeah, like working in parallel with that effort, that's awesome. Great.
Great.
Move to accept to include this in the transportation bill?
Second.
People in agreement, yeah? Excellent, good. Well, thank you, Representative Bartholomew.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is great. So, our plan is, okay, that'll get tucked into the bill and in the right place. And so we're ready to move on to the next piece, which is some revised language around e-bikes. So I think because it was about some definitions that we needed to include and a few other things.
So if you look at draft 5.1, we'll then get to the 4 pages that have been handed out that's posted as Rep. Shaw's proposal. But if you look at draft 5.1 on page 14, starting at line 13, those are the definitions that are proposed to be added to codified law. What you don't see there is a definition for, I'm going to get the name wrong, an adaptive electric cycle. So the piece from Representative Shaw's proposal is to add a definition of adaptive electric cycle, which would be an electric bicycle or an electric cargo bicycle that has been modified to meet the physical needs or abilities of the operator or a passenger. So that is what an adaptive electric cycle would be. You cannot see it here, but I will include in draft 6.1 in terms of what is covered under the Replace Your Ride program proposed for codification and the Electrify Your Fleet program proposed for session law, to say that the incentives can be used for an adaptive electric cycle. And for purposes of the base MSRP for the adaptive electric cycle in the Electrify Your Fleet program, it will match the base MSRP for this one. The Replace Your Ride program, because it's like a voucher amount that can be used for different things, I don't think it has for anything a base MSRP included. So there's not one for this there.
Questions?
Yeah, question.
Representative.
Didn't this refer to a tricycle before also?
Okay, so I asked Patrick about that, and he said that because of the modification, it would be viewed, he would interpret it, and the agency is the one that's interpreting this definition to determine what is covered under the program, that they would interpret it to include a tricycle as a modified bicycle. If you look at the definitions of electric bicycle in statute already, an electric cargo bicycle, it talks about, 2 wheels. So I think where you're getting at it, not necessarily just being an adaptive bicycle, 2 wheels only, is it says adaptive electric cycle, not bicycle. And the fact that adding the 3rd wheel, whether it be some sort of aftermarket or done by the manufacturer, is a modification.
Okay.
Talked to Patrick and he said they would interpret it to be trikes as well.
Representative McCoy?
Is that like a normal definition of an adaptive electric cycle, or did we just make up that name?
It is taken from BED's incentive program, the way they're defining an adaptive electric cycle.
Taken from?
Burlington Electric Department's
Burlington
incentive program.
Okay.
Other questions?
But I didn't have to create it, and Patrick sent it.
Okay, that's what I was just wondering.
Other questions, or are we ready to move to the next section, I think? It sounds like.
Okay, so then it's just shifting the balance of the section numbers there. And then for purposes of what's included in this proposal, for section 13A, which is the e-bike incentive program language, adding a subsection A to say that the definitions that are added as 19 VSA section 2901 apply to the program. So that's where you're going to get your definition for electric bicycle, electric cargo bicycle, and adaptive electric cycle. Adding a subsection heading for subsection B, just since now there are more subsections, I thought it made sense. No substantive change, it still is dealing with authorization and modifications. Where you're getting to changes in the program is that it used to be that the incentivized e-bike, now that we have a definition that's using the word electric bicycle, I use that, but that there needs to be the self-certification that the incentivized electric bicycle, electric cargo bicycle, or adaptive electric cycle is used in a way that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And then you've got, it used to just be subdivision 3 to say what the MSRP range was for an electric bicycle. Now it is a range, a smaller range for electric bicycle. It's between $800 and $4,000. It used to be between $800 and $5,000. For electric cargo bicycles, there's no minimum, although I'm sure they cost more than $800. The maximum being $5,000. And then for an adaptive electric cycle, it's any base MSRP, and that matches the treatment for the incentive program for new PEVs when it comes to individuals that get the disability plate or hang tag not having an MSRP cap on the vehicle eligibility. And then in subsection C and D, it's just adding the reader assistance headings. And then for purposes of the reporting, it's been expanded a little bit to address the fact that there are now different types of cycles that would be incentivizable. So the Agency of Transportation needs to address the incentives that were provided for all 3 under the section in the report. It needs to provide a breakdown of who received an incentive under the program. And then in subdivision 3, this is where you get your main change. The breakdown needs to be by manufacturer and type of those different types of cycles that are incentivized. So you'll get more data and make a decision about what you would want to do with the program going forward, if anything. Those are changes.
Representative Shaw, is this what you were looking for?
I think we have it.
Okay.
Hope we have it. But this is just when we, if I remember correctly, a couple years ago, when the electric bicycle program didn't go this deeply into it. It was a last minute addition, if I remember correctly. Just like, let's just do this and get started and see. So that's why this seems to be a little bit painful, because now we're going backwards and try to bring the program up to what's happening in the field. So I think that's a good thing. So sorry about the 2.5, 3 hours of testing.
Great. Well, I appreciate bringing the language here, because I think we need to do our due diligence here, and I think it's stronger. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, folks, I think these are the 2 last call. Any more discussion about e-bikes? So I think if the committee, my sense of the committee is that the committee would like to bring this language into the bill, to our bill.
So
And, sorry, so I know, yes, I think we, yeah, so, okay. And so poof, we will have version 6.1. and I think it might literally be poof that we have it in a moment, so.
You just need to talk about section 6B.
Right, so there's one more, when I was, there was somebody raised this with me, on our, my way to the floor. It's in the section 6, is it?
6B, it'll be on page 12 of draft 5.1.
Okay, so when we, yes, so this is the section about getting this report, this public transit report, that, and I hadn't caught this, but Jamie Feehan, I'm just gonna say Jamie Feehan, who had kind of worked with members of this committee on this on some of this language. This language changed a little bit, and so that rather than the Vermont Public Transportation Association doesn't typically do this kind of work like LEDA studies, but that the regional planning, the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission does and has done this work, and so. There was a suggestion, and I ran it by Michelle, that if we could make them kind of the lead responsible for doing the work in consultation with VPTA and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, that might be more appropriate, because I don't think it was the intent of this committee by doing this that we would be appropriating money to VPTA to do this study. Because that's what it could mean when we ask an agency to do the work, that, that's within their budget. But I think if the legislature does provide funds for our regional planning commissions, and this is kind of within their wheelhouse. Is that fair to say, Michelle, if I put you on the spot?
Yes, for the record, Michelle Boomhauer, Agency of Transportation. So the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission facilitated that last study that's referenced there in the bottom of this language. And they receive both, they receive money that passes through the Agency of Transportation because they are a metropolitan planning organization. They receive direct funding from Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration to do planning activities for transportation in the urbanized area. And so the suggestion was, in terms of finding a lead agency that has staff to facilitate this, perhaps putting them at the front end of this to help EPTA and the league come up with legislative recommendations for next year would be appropriate. Somehow you may want to include the word for the statewide transit program or system, statewide transit system. So it's clear that this is not just a Chittenden County thing. That would be my only other recommendation.
Okay, scribbling down.
So would it be the local transit on line 11 for the local match required of public transit providers in the statewide transit system in Vermont?
Yes.
So is the committee comfortable with making that change to this language?
Well, I just want to know what the change is. I'm not quite understanding.
Okay.
I think you probably don't need them. Okay, so I think what it would be is, it would say, the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, comma, in consultation with the Vermont Public Transportation Association and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, close comma, and then everything stays the same from shall provide to, on a dedicated funding source for the local match required of public transit providers operating in the statewide transit system not later than December 1, 2023.
Okay. Representative Campbell.
Just wondering whether we have to ask, or not ask, but talk to Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission about this.
Yeah, I will.
You break the news.
They're not in the room, so they got volunteered.
As I mentioned to the chair, they facilitated this, last statewide finance study on behalf of this group of folks. And so I have a fairly high level of confidence that they would be willing to take this on. This is a much lower bar of effort. And as I also mentioned to the chair, if they are unhappy with the language, they can fix it in the Senate. As we like to say.
So is the committee comfortable with making those minor changes for our next draft? Yes, okay. So I think we're at the stage where, Anthea, tell us that like these changes, have you already tucked them in?
I have done everything except for the ones that you just talked about and incorporating the Vermont Route 5 language. And within making those changes, I've also renumbered the sections, shifted them around to reflect what we discussed earlier, and I've made a little table that just says what was section blank is now section Y. So I need, let's say like 5-10 minutes to go make these changes. I will send it to I send it to Jeannie and she can print copies.
Sure, why don't we say 15 minutes then, okay, just take a 15-minute break to.
Ice cream break and we'll be back.
Yeah, there you go, get some ice cream.
And do you want to come back and walk through it again today before going home, or?
What I think I'd like to do is maybe just have a couple of minutes just to just say, this is where the changes are, these are the sections, and then let people take this home overnight with the idea that we will come back in committee tomorrow and walk through, do our final walkthrough, with the intention of, that being our final walkthrough and hopefully final. I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
Vote? Yeah, we'll take a vote. The idea is that we want to vote on this tomorrow. So how does that sound to the committee to have time we'll have time in committee to also read it, but I wanted people to have time tonight to have it.
And
Good?
the one caveat I will add is it hasn't been to the editors yet in full. The language that you saw from Representative Shaw and Representative Bartholomew has been individually edited, but the editors are going to want to take one more look at it, and hopefully they can do that before you meet tomorrow morning.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, I'll go make those changes and I'll be back.
Great, so we will end our live stream and be back